The chandelier in our dining room cast 1,000 glittering specks of light across the polished mahogany table. I remember how the crystals seemed to dance, each one a tiny star in the universe of my sister's 18th birthday celebration. The air was thick with the scent of roasted prime rib and expensive perfume, a stark contrast to the frozen pizza I'd eaten alone in my room earlier, claiming I had too much homework to help with the preparations. The truth was, I couldn't bear to watch the final touches being applied to my sister's coronation. My father stood, his chair scraping softly against the hardwood floor. He tapped his champagne flute with a silver fork, the clear ting cutting through the laughter and conversation. All eyes turned to him. "As you all know, we're here to celebrate our daughter's 18th birthday," he began, his voice booming with paternal pride. He placed a hand on my sister's shoulder. She beamed up at him, the picture of youthful perfection in her designer dress. "And to mark this milestone, her mother and I want to ensure her future is as bright as she is." He paused for dramatic effect, his gaze sweeping over the assembled family and friends. I sat frozen in my chair, 16 years old and already knowing, with a sickening certainty, what was coming. "We are establishing a trust fund for her," he announced, and a collective, appreciative murmur rippled through the room. $50,000 to be used for her education, for a down payment on a home, for whatever she needs to get a strong, secure start in life. A soft landing, as they say. The room erupted in applause. My sister's eyes welled with happy tears as my mother embraced her. I clapped too, my hands moving on autopilot, the sound dull and hollow in my own ears. A soft landing. The words echoed, each one a small, sharp stone thrown at the foundation of my own life. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the mansion was quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher, I found my mother in the kitchen, wrapping leftovers in cling film. "The trust fund," I started, my voice small in the cavernous room. Will I get one too? When I turn 18? My mother didn't look up from the roast beef she was carefully portioning. "Oh, honey, no. That's not the plan for you." The finality in her tone was like a door slamming shut. "Why not?" She finally paused, straightening up and brushing a strand of hair from her face. She looked at me with an expression I would come to know well, a blend of pity and resolve. "Your sister, she needs that kind of security. She's not as driven as you are. You're our strong one. You're independent. You'll make your own way, and you'll be prouder for it. You don't need a handout." The word handout hung in the air, poisoning it. It wasn't a handout when it was for my sister, it was a soft landing. For me, aspiring to the same gift was framed as a character flaw. My independence, a trait I'd never asked for, was being weaponized against me. That moment became the defining blueprint of our family dynamic. My sister, the princess, floated through life on a gilded cloud. The $50,000 trust fund paid for her art history degree at a private university, a semester abroad in Florence where she learned to appreciate Renaissance art and drink expensive wine, and the down payment on a chic downtown apartment the moment she graduated. She hopped from one gallery internship to another, never staying anywhere long enough for it to become a career, cushioned always by the financial safety net our parents had woven for her. Her life was a curated exhibit of potential, forever on the verge of being realized, but never quite getting there. I, the independent one, took out student loans. I worked 2 part-time jobs through college, one as a barista, another as a research assistant, studying for my finance degree in the bleary hours between shifts and classes. I lived in a shared apartment with 3 roommates. Our refrigerator a testament to budgetary constraints, filled with generic brand soda and discount vegetables. My parents' version of support was occasional, enthusiastic praise for my resilience. "Look at you, juggling everything," my mother would say during our weekly, strained phone calls. "We never have to worry about you." It was the highest compliment they could pay me, and it felt like a condemnation. Their financial help, when it came, was for things that couldn't be construed as investment in my future. A check for my birthday. A gift card to a nice restaurant for Christmas. When I mentioned the crushing weight of my student loan interest, my father would clap me on the back and say, "That's how you build character. You'll appreciate your success so much more because you earned it yourself." Meanwhile, my sister's character was being built with trips to Europe and a wardrobe I could only window shop for. When she crashed her brand new, parent-funded car, they bought her another. When I struggled to pay for repairs on my decade-old used car, I was given a lecture on the importance of an emergency fund. The resentment wasn't a fire, it was a slow, cold seep, like groundwater, freezing and expanding in the cracks of my heart. I watched as my sister's soft landing turned into a permanent hammock, while I was given a pair of running shoes and told the marathon started yesterday. When I landed a competitive entry-level analyst position at a prestigious investment firm after graduation, my father's pride was palpable. "See," he said, his chest puffed out. "We knew you could do it on your own. You didn't need us to carry you." The implication was clear. My success was theirs to claim because of their calculated neglect, while my sister's stagnation was her own fault, despite their constant, lavish support. I had become the proof of concept for their parenting philosophy, while she was the beloved exception to every rule. I hung up the phone after that conversation and looked around my modest, but self-paid-for apartment. The silence was deafening. I had done everything they'd asked. I had been independent. I had never asked for a handout. And all it had earned me was the privilege of continuing to struggle while they applauded from the sidelines. The $50,000 trust fund wasn't just money. It was a symbol of a love that was conditional, of support that was selective, of a family narrative where I was the supporting character in my sister's starring role. And in that quiet moment, a new, steely part of me began to form. If independence was the only currency they respected, then I would become so independent that I would no longer need their approval, their praise, or their twisted version of love. I would build my own safety net, so strong and so high that if they ever fell, they wouldn't be able to reach it. The decade that followed was a masterclass in quiet, relentless grinding. While my sister's life was a series of beautifully curated vignettes for social media, brunch in boutique cafes, openings at art galleries, vacations in Tuscany, my life was a spreadsheet. I became a ghost in the machine of high finance, my existence measured in quarterly reports, risk assessments, and the steady, upward trajectory of my bank balance. My independent path, while brutal, had forged me into a formidable professional. I didn't have the safety net to take risks, so I became an expert at calculating them. I moved from the entry-level analyst position to associate, then to vice president. I lived in the same modest apartment for years, even as my salary multiplied, pouring every spare dollar into paying off my student loans and then into aggressive, smart investments. I drove my old car until it was more duct tape than metal. Not because I couldn't afford a new one, but because every payment avoided was capital deployed elsewhere. My sister's life, in contrast, was a masterclass in arrested development. The $50,000 trust fund was long gone, spent on a lifestyle she couldn't sustain. Her marriage to a man as directionless as she was had ended in a messy divorce, leaving her with nothing but a taste for things she could no longer afford. She'd moved back into our parents' home with her 2 young children, turning their quiet, empty nest into a chaotic, 3-generational household. The soft landing had, ironically, ensured she never learned how to fly. My parents, who had always presented an image of unshakable financial comfort, began to show cracks. I heard it first in the strained tones during our weekly calls. My father's bad investments, chasing get-rich-quick schemes his golf buddies recommended, had started to bleed their retirement savings dry. The financial drain of supporting my sister and her children was a constant, leaking faucet. My father's poorly timed retirement, based on the arrogant assumption that his luck would hold, converged with everything else into a perfect storm. The soft landing they had engineered for my sister had turned into a quicksand pit for all of them. The hints became less subtle. My mother began asking hypothetical questions about interest rates and loan terms. My father, once the fond of unsolicited financial advice, started asking me vague questions about market trends. I played dumb, offering generic, non-committal advice. You should talk to a financial advisor, Dad. I knew what was coming. A part of me, the part still nursing the wound of that $50,000 trust fund, had been waiting for it my entire adult life. The summons came on a Sunday afternoon. A family dinner. The atmosphere in my parents' house, once a showroom of suburban success, was thick with a new, shabby anxiety. The furniture was the same, but it seemed tired. The air smelled faintly of microwaved leftovers, not my mother's famous cooking. My father's joviality was forced, a mask that didn't quite fit. My mother's smile was a tight, nervous line. My sister was there, of course, scrolling through her phone on the couch, her children watching cartoons at a volume just a little too loud. She barely looked up when I came in. Her presence in the home was a permanent reminder of their failed strategy. After a tense meal of dry chicken and overcooked vegetables, my father cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the silent dining room. We need to talk, he began, his eyes fixed on the grain of the tablecloth, unable to meet my gaze. The truth is, we're in a bit of a bind. My mother reached for his hand, her knuckles white. Some of our investments didn't pan out, he continued, his voice losing its customary boom. And with your sister and the kids here, well, the costs add up. We're facing the possibility of losing the house. The words landed like a physical blow, but not to me. I watched them, my face a carefully neutral mask. My sister finally looked up from her phone, her expression one of bored annoyance. As if our parents' impending homelessness was a personal inconvenience to her. We need to refinance, my mother whispered, her voice breaking. But the bank, with our current situation. They both looked at me. The ask hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. The weight of decades of inequality pressed down on the room. How much? I asked, my voice calm and neutral, the same tone I used with nervous clients. My father named a figure. It was almost the exact amount of my sister's trust fund, adjusted for inflation. The poetic justice was so perfect it was almost cliché. I see, I said, folding my napkin and placing it neatly beside my plate. That's a significant amount. We'd pay you back, of course. My mother rushed to say, tears glistening in her eyes. With interest. It would just be a loan to get us back on our feet. A bridge. I let the silence stretch, looking at each of them in turn. My defeated father. My desperate mother, my entitled, helpless sister. I felt a strange sense of calm. This was the moment I had been preparing for my entire life, though I never knew it. I have a question, I said finally. My tone shifting from neutral to that of a banker evaluating a high-risk loan. When I was 18, you told me I didn't need a handout. You said I was independent and would be prouder for making my own way. You gave her $50,000 for a soft landing. I gestured toward my sister, who glared at me. So, I need to understand the business case here. What is the ROI on this loan? What collateral can you offer? My father's face flushed a deep, mottled red. This is different. This is an emergency. We're your family. Are you? I asked, my head tilting. Because as family, you taught me a very valuable lesson about self-reliance. You taught me that in this family, support isn't given, it's earned. You taught me that some children are investments and others are independent contractors. You made your choice. You invested in her. I nodded toward my sister. And that investment has yielded a negative return. So, I'm applying the principles you instilled in me. I'm being independent. And I'm making an independent financial decision. I stood up, the chair legs scraping against the floor. I'm not going to give you the money. The explosion was immediate. My sister shot to her feet. You selfish bitch. After everything they've done for you. My mother gasped as if I'd struck her. My father stood up, his fists clenched. After everything we've done for you. This is how you repay us. We raised you. You did, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. You raised me to be the woman who doesn't need to beg for a soft landing. You raised me to be the woman who says no. You should be proud. I turned out exactly as you wanted me to, completely, utterly independent. I walked out of the dining room, leaving them in their beautiful, crumbling home. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. The soft click, a more powerful punctuation mark than any dramatic exit could ever be. The war was over. I had won by refusing to fight on their terms. I had simply accepted the role they had assigned me and played it to its logical, brutal conclusion. The fallout was nuclear. I was branded a monster. An ungrateful wretch who was letting her family become homeless. The guilt-tripping texts and tearful voicemails came in waves. Each one a fresh attempt to pull me back into the dysfunctional dynamic that had defined my life. My mother, how could you be so cold? We're your parents. We're losing everything. My father, I hope you can sleep at night, knowing you're turning your own family out on the street. My sister, you've always been jealous of me. You're just using this as an excuse to punish me. I didn't respond to any of them. For the first time, I held all the power. Their anger was not a reflection of my cruelty, but a testament to the effectiveness of the philosophy they themselves had imposed upon me. They weren't sorry for what they had done. They were sorry their strategy had failed. They were sorry the independent daughter had taken their lessons too much to heart. But I hadn't said no out of pure spite. I had said no because giving them the money would have been enabling the very behavior that created the crisis. It would have been a temporary band-aid on a gangrenous wound. And I would have been back in the same position in another year. Expected to bail them out again. They wouldn't have learned a thing. They would have simply learned that I could be manipulated. A week later, I requested a formal meeting with them at a neutral location, a quiet conference. room at my office building. I wanted the sterility of that environment, far from the emotional manipulation of their home. I needed this to be a transaction, not a family therapy session. They arrived, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen them. My father's suit was wrinkled. My mother's hair lacked its usual careful styling. My sister wasn't with them. She had, predictably, refused to come, claiming it was beneath her. I sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, a folder in front of me. The power dynamic was visually explicit. "I'm not giving you a check," I began, preempting any renewed pleas. "But I am not going to let you become homeless. So, I've prepared a proposal." I slid copies of a document across the table. It was a formal, legally binding loan agreement, drafted by my lawyer. It was merciless in its detail. "This outlines a loan for the amount you specified," I explained, my voice cool and professional. "It has a market rate interest and a strict 5-year amortization schedule with monthly payments. It uses the house as collateral. If you miss a single payment, I will have the legal right to begin foreclosure proceedings." They stared at the document in shock, their eyes scanning the dense legalese. "Furthermore," I continued, my gaze sharp and unwavering, "this loan is contingent on one non-negotiable condition." I paused, ensuring I had their full attention. "She," I said, the word cutting through the air, "will get a full-time job within 60 days. Any job. She will contribute a set amount to the household expenses each month, which will be verified by bank statements you will provide to me. This is not optional. Her days of being a kept woman are over." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "You can't dictate what your sister does." "I can, and I am," I replied evenly. "Because my money comes with strings. You, of all people, should understand how that works." Her trust fund had strings. The string was that it enabled her to avoid growing up. My strings are designed to force her to finally do it. Consider it a remedial course in the independence you so valued in me. The silence in the room was absolute. I had taken their own twisted logic and weaponized it. I was offering them the same tough love they had always claimed to practice. My father, ever the pragmatist deep down, was the first to speak. He scanned the document, his lawyer's eye recognizing its ironclad nature. "These terms are severe. The interest, the payment schedule. They're the terms a bank would offer someone with your current financial profile and credit history," I said without a hint of sympathy. "Which is to say, they wouldn't offer you any terms at all. I am your only option. This is your soft landing. It's just going to feel a lot harder than you expected. Because this time, it comes with accountability." I watched the war on my father's face, his pride battling his desperation. Pride had built this situation. Desperation would have to solve it. He picked up the pen. His hand shook slightly. "We don't have a choice," he muttered to my weeping mother. "Everyone always has a choice," I said softly. "You made yours years ago. This is mine." They signed the papers. The humiliation in the room was a palpable force, but beneath it, I saw a flicker of something else in my father's eyes, a grudging, horrified respect. It was the first time he had ever looked at me not as his difficult, independent daughter, but as a peer, as a force to be reckoned with. I signed my copy with a steady hand, the scratch of the pen the only sound. I was now my family's creditor. The first year was the hardest. The monthly payments were a strain, forcing my parents into a lifestyle of coupon clipping and canceled subscriptions they had never known. My sister, after a furious Month-long job search filled with complaints about being overqualified for entry-level work. Finally took a position as a receptionist at a dental office. She hated it. She complained constantly, but for the first time in her life, she was contributing. I received their bank statements every month, as stipulated in the contract. I watched the automated payment come out of their account and into mine. There was no communication beyond what was legally necessary. The family was functionally broken. But it had been broken long before I refused them the money. I had just stopped pretending it wasn't. Then, a strange thing began to happen. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things started to change. My sister, forced into the mundanity of a 9-to-5 job, began to find a shred of self-respect. She got a small raise. She started managing her team's schedule. It wasn't her dream job, but it was a job. She was building a work history. The learned helplessness that had been cultivated in her for decades began to recede, replaced by a nascent competence. My parents, freed from the constant financial drain of fully supporting her, began to rebuild their retirement, slowly and carefully. The fear of losing their home was replaced by the disciplined pressure of a budget. A pressure I had lived with my entire adult life. They learned the value of $1 because they were finally forced to. About 2 years into the loan, my mother called me. It wasn't a plea or a guilt trip. Her voice was different, subdued, thoughtful. "Your sister, she's talking about moving out," she said, a note of wonder in her voice. "She's saved up a little money. She found a small apartment she can afford with her salary." "I'm glad to hear it," I said, my tone careful. There was a long pause. We never meant for it to be like this," she said softly. "The trust fund, everything. We thought we were doing the right thing for each of you. We thought we were playing to your strengths." "It wasn't about our strengths, Mom," I said, the old hurt a dull ache now, not a sharp pain. "It was about your fears. You were afraid she would fail, so you never let her try. You were afraid I would, what? Succeed too much? Become too independent? Your plan for me worked too well." She didn't argue. She just sighed, a weary, honest sound. "I'm starting to see that now." The loan was paid off in 4 years and 11 months. They scrimped and saved and made the final payment early. The day the last transfer hit my account, I received a short, formal email from my father. "The loan is satisfied. Thank you for your assistance." It was the closest I would ever get to "I was wrong." I didn't keep the money. I took the entire principal and interest, a sum that now far exceeded the adjusted value of that original $50,000 trust fund, and established a college fund for my sister's children. I sent them the paperwork with no return address. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a statement. The cycle ended with me. I would not punish the next generation for the sins of their grandparents. I heard through the family grapevine that my sister did move out. She's still a receptionist, but she's now the office manager. She's dating a nice, normal man who works in IT. They take budget vacations and are saving for a house. It's a modest life, but it's hers. She built it herself. My parents and I have a relationship now, but it is distant and polite. More like cordial acquaintances than family. The deep, foundational trust was broken long ago, and some cracks can never be fully repaired. We exchange cards on holidays. We have dinner once or twice a year. The conversations are safe, revolving around the weather, their grandchildren, my work. We never talk about the past. The $50,000 trust fund they gave my sister bought her a decade of dependency and nearly bankrupted them. The independence they forced on me bought me my freedom, my power, and my financial security. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't cruelty, it's quiet, unassailable success. It's living so well that your very existence becomes a constant, unspoken reminder of their poor judgment. It's taking the bitter lesson they taught you and transforming it into your greatest strength. They came to me begging for money, expecting to find the same pliable daughter they had always known. Instead, they got a reality check delivered not with shouting, but with a legally binding contract and the calm, unwavering application of their own philosophy. They had spent a lifetime investing in the wrong child, and when their portfolio crashed, they discovered that their safest investment had been the one they'd never made, in me. And I, the independent one, had the ultimate satisfaction of knowing that I hadn't just saved myself, I had, in my own ruthless way, saved them too. I had given them the one thing their money had never been able to buy my sister: the gift of standing on their own 2 feet. It was the hardest lesson they ever had to learn, and I was the teacher they never knew they needed.